Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, welcome to our Tuesday Night Live. This is going to be a quite different show. Quite different show here tonight because you got me. We don't have any guests on, no agents sitting beside me. I have a lot to talk about. I want to go over so much. I love you guys. I appreciate you showing up every Tuesday. Thank you so much. We're going to have some fun tonight. We're going to talk about the controversy on, I already see it in the comments. Zillow says home prices are going up. We're going to talk about the fact that they're not. Prices are coming down. If you're a seller, I believe that you missed the peak big time. I think it's a downhill slope from here. We're seeing it on the street. We have listings ourselves that, things aren't flying off the shelves like they used to. Just got back from Connecticut. I want to talk a little bit about that. I went to Peter Schiff's house. For those that know Peter Schiff, that have seen him on our show before, he invited me to his Connecticut home. So we went, and it was interesting. We drove up. It was about a 4.5 hour ride from our office here in Maryland. And when we got to the hotel, it was late at night, probably 10 o'clock, I think it was. And we pull right up front, and I go in, and I see we have 3 rooms booked, and I see that there are like 2 people standing in line at the counter, and things really aren't moving that fast. So, I'm trying to see what's going on. By the time I get up to the counter, like 30 minutes later, only 2 people standing. I mean, it was like chaos. There was limited staff. And they kept leaving the counter and coming back and leaving. And people were coming that had already checked in to the counter. And they were, as soon as someone came to the counter person left and would come back. I'm like, what's going on? And somebody said, well, their systems are down. So I'm thinking, okay, this is Sunday. This was due to CrowdStrike, the company that had a glitch. They are a cybersecurity company, and they had a glitch on Friday, and it affected about 8,400 computers that have Microsoft, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But by the time I got up to the counter, they were doing manual check-in, and again, there were only 2 other people couples, groups checking in front of me. And they said, well, our systems are down. They took a copy of my ID and my credit card, and they couldn't give me a room key. And this was the whole thing where people were coming in and coming to the counter, and they were leaving because they were going to the different floors, to the guest rooms, to let them in with a master fob. So I said, well, that's great. And they said, well, look, if you go to leave your room, you'll have to jar your door so that it doesn't shut. And I'm thinking, well, that's not very, I'm not going to do that. I could see somebody like, oh, this is great. No one will be locking their doors. And then, people just walking up and down the aisles, the halls, and entering rooms that are ajar. So it was a pain. But my point is it was a big inconvenience. And this was just a small sampling, I believe, of what we will be looking at if something massive happens, some kind of a cyber attack, whether it's intentional, non-intentional, whatever, terrorist type of attack. I mean, we would be screwed, right? This is just a small sampling. So due to the CrowdStrike, malfunction, we'll call it, we have a poll also because I've been asking, I asked for people to tell me, do you think it was an accident, yes or no, or don't you really know? You're undecided. You could check out our poll. Joe, maybe you can pull it up already. I can't see it on there. So where are we? Yeah, so most people don't believe it was an accident. They think it was some type of test or intentional, and that's what I've heard a lot of people talking about. because for a very small period of time, when the housing market crashed in 2008, I was a contractor building houses and rehabbing houses. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is how we know this time it's coming. Where in 2008, I mean, I know people like Peter Schiff wrote a book on the housing market crash of 2008, and it happened. But most people didn't know what was happening. And part of it was because the Fed at the time was telling everyone that the housing market was stable, and the banking industry as well. So until it really hit the fan and imploded, we really didn't know that we would be in such a, housing market downturn. But it was just kind of cruising along. Everything was kind of fine until it wasn't. I believe this time we know, if we're looking at the indicators and we're paying attention to what's going on, we kind of know, though people didn't listen over the last 4 years as this thing was, bubbling up. The housing market, everything else. We're talking about the housing market tonight. I think now we have a little bit more of an insight on, yes, the housing market can downturn. Home prices can decline. We saw that for the first time since World War II in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, and not until 13 that we started to see a rebound. But anyway, when this CrowdStrike glitch, whether it was intentional, a test, whatever, not trying to be conspiratorial here, but when it happened, we saw what the results were. Flights were grounded. In fact, Peter Schiff was actually flying back from Europe from vacation on Saturday. We were podcasting with him on Monday at his home. And so, we didn't even know that he was going to make it back until, he got back. He said the airport where, he flies private, but still it was a small airport. He said it was very crowded, very chaotic. But they did make it back. But my point is, flights were grounded. Podcasters, news channels, were knocked off the air. People couldn't access their banking. A lot of people couldn't use their ATM to get money out of the bank. And it's just, a small glitch. But I want to play a clip here because, and Joe, I know you have it queued up here, but I want to play a clip that was really kind of, I thought, disturbing. Let's listen.
Mr. Kurtz, it's Savannah here in Milwaukee. I mean, you're in the cybersecurity business, and I certainly don't even pretend to understand this, but according to your statement, it was a single content update that has managed to shut down air travel, credit card payment systems, banks, broadcast, street lights, 911, emergency around the globe. Why is there not some kind of redundancy or some sort of backup? How is it that one single software bug can have such a profound and immediate impact?
Well, when you look at the complexity of cybersecurity, you're always trying to stay one step ahead of the adversaries. Excuse me. Man, just 1 second, please.
Oh yeah, take a drink of water.
Yeah, sorry.
Sure, it's been a long night.
It's been a long night. We're always trying to stay one step ahead of the adversaries. And in this particular case, our systems are always looking for the latest attacks from these adversaries that are out there. So this content update went out, and as it does, and it's been doing for many, many years, obviously we've got a robust team that's looking at the safety and security and the quality of these updates, and we have to go back and see what happened here. But if there's a negative interaction with the way some of these operating systems work, in this particular case, it was only the Microsoft operating system that was impacted, you'll see a reaction like this. And this is, what we've seen here.
Yeah,
All right, so he got a little choked up there. I felt sorry for the guy. Thank goodness he had a bottle of water like I do here. Sometimes I do get choked up. I talk all day, so I get that. But what I was saying was, when the housing market crashed in 2008, I had decided that I wanted no more to do with the construction business. I wanted completely out of real estate. And that was just as things were imploding. I never got out of the construction business. Actually, I doubled down and bought properties for pennies on the dollar, and rehabbed and built and turned some of the properties into rentals, residential rentals. But my point was, no, I didn't see it coming. But when it did happen, I thought that I wanted to get into something else, and I got into technology. And a lot of people don't realize that, but I started a company. You could still find it on YouTube. It was called meetlocalbiz.com. I had this great idea that I would help businesses survive this downturn, and we would do so by doing video of them and publishing them on our website and putting coupons. This is before Angie's List. This is before Andrew Mason started Groupon, if you all remember what that was. But anyway, now that you guys, I'm going to see a lot of views on my Meet Local Biz channel that hasn't been up, and I haven't even looked at it in a long time. But anyway, we were doing videos. But my point is that in our small little company, we had a developer. We had a coder, we had a developer, and we were doing websites for people, and we had companies all over the country, and that we were developing programs for. And oh my gosh, is he pulling it up here? No, that's not. There you go. Thanks, Joe, for the humbling, moment. But anyway, back then, video wasn't cool. We didn't have this kind of thing, and we would put cameras in front of people, and we'd have to put tape over the red light because they would literally pass out. They would faint. There was no TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. But anyway, not that long ago, 2008, 2009. But my point is, we had a software developer in-house. There was no way at our tiny company would we ever push out any kind of an update or anything without first testing it, number one. And number two, we ran redundancy. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? So what redundancy is, for those that have no idea, and I only know enough to even, be saying what I'm saying and not much more. But redundancy means that you're running two different computers, the hard drives, and if something happens to one, you have the backup. So you could literally test something on one hard drive, push it out, and if it didn't work or didn't give you the results or crashed something with an operating system, you would just go to the other redundant, non-affected program, and that would be it. Now, I don't know that would be it. I'm not the programmer, but my point is, I don't think that we would be looking at not being able to get room keys at the Hilton days later, 5 days later, right? 4 days later. So, a lot was impacted by this. And I think it's just odd because a lot of weird stuff is going on. I mean, look, we had an assassination attempt on a former president running to be the president. We already know today that the director of the Secret Service, they're gone. She stepped down. I don't know if anybody watched that today, or little clips of her being grilled. But I mean, that's a total breakdown. Whatever. Then we have our president of the United States disappears for all intents and purposes. We go through primaries and, people vote for him, and then he's, whatever reason is sort of pushed out here. We just heard him a week or so ago saying he's not stepping down. So now all of a sudden we have that going on. Where is he? Who knows? Now tomorrow, I mean, there's all kinds of rumors going out there, tapes on the internet, videos on the internet. It's craziness going on with that. But then this. And I will add, I think like over 7% of this company, CrowdStrike, is owned by BlackRock. So, of course, they own a lot of companies. I just think there's a whole lot of just really strange things going on. I don't know about you guys. Maybe let's check out the poll again. How many votes do we have on that, Joe? 329. So we'll keep checking that. Still about the same. Most people think it's not an accident. Okay, 58%. So, and then you have your undecided. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the Peter Schiff video that's going to be coming out this Saturday. It's interesting because I do try and bring you very, I want to say, informed guests for you to listen to. Now, I'm not unique to YouTube. I mean, Peter Schiff's on a lot of podcasts. He has one of his own. But, I am fortunate enough to be the one that's doing the interviewing. So I think for me, that is really amazing. It's awesome for me because I know who my audience is and I know what you all want to hear. And I hear a lot of the same things that a lot of these very popular, people, they get into this, sort of like, where they say the same thing. It's almost like, they're on autopilot. And I try and disrupt that and try and find out what they're not saying or what they're not putting out there, what they're thinking about. Like, what are they really concerned or worried about? And I like to bring that to you. So I hope you've enjoyed those interviews. If you're new to our channel, you can check them out. Saturday's a big posting day for us. They're usually long format, hour videos. But Peter and I really kind of, we dug in. And I think it was interesting. A lot of, his house is beautiful. He only spends a couple of months here in the stateside because I think they're very little exception to you can only be stateside for like 90 days out of the year in order to live in Puerto Rico and get that 4% tax. I think Puerto Ricans pay 12% tax, but Americans living in Puerto Rico, because it's a American territory, U.S. territory, if you run most of your business operation or your business operation out of Puerto Rico, they only pay like 4% income tax, and there's no capital gain tax. So if somebody were there and they were rehabbing a house or building a building or whatever, and they sold it, or they had a business and they sold it, they keep all the money. There's absolutely no capital gain tax. So there's a lot of benefit on why people move there, and they don't have to denounce their citizenship, where, if you go to France or you go anywhere, and you are still an American citizen, you have to pay your federal income tax even if you're not working in the U.S. So that's the big attraction for a lot of these people that move to Puerto Rico. Besides the fact that it's beautiful, year round, but they do get hurricanes and stuff like that, and they have the cartel. So there are different things to think about if you're going to live in Puerto Rico. But I've been there. I've been at Peter's house in Puerto Rico. I was grateful to get an opportunity to go to Connecticut and see him. It's close to us. It was a drive. But we really, he addressed a lot of things that people aren't hearing. For instance, and it's coming out this Saturday, but he spoke about, he's all about gold. And one of the things I said to him is, what gets you off of your gold kick, right? Because a lot of people believe, and there's a lot of history to gold as being real money, a way to protect your cash. Excuse me. A lot of people are buying it. Probably not as many that should. But I asked him, what would change your mind on gold? And he said AI. That AI could threaten that whole, concept of gold being real money. And he explains that. So that I think you'll find very interesting. But also, when I was out to see him last November in Puerto Rico, as somebody that talks about the housing market and who really has been a real estate expert, he worked on Wall Street and he predicted the housing market crash, as many did. I didn't, back in 2008. But what I got out of him this time was, Peter, when we spoke back in November, you said that, very respectful, to Peter, but I said, you told me that home prices would not crash. They would not drop. Because you said that the low mortgage, the golden handcuffs that everybody talks about, would be what stops somebody not only from selling, but what would keep the prices, high, because it would limit the amount of inventory. But we are completely missing a whole lot of other factors, some of which I'm going to show you tonight. I'm going to show you our MLS. I'm going to dive in. I'm going to just kind of go over some things with you and prove it to you that home prices are coming down in Maryland, which is one of the most stable states in the whole U.S. because we have the government. We have, a lot of the government agencies right here. We're close to D.C., our proximity, a lot of government contractors. But I'm going to show you that. But what he did say was that he thought home prices were going to come down. It took a lot to get it out of him. And I said, I don't want you telling me this because you want to, appease me or anybody else that is in disagreement with me or anyone else that's telling you that common sense will prevail despite the fact that you think it won't, because the common sense are you people. That's what a lot of people don't understand. They don't get it. The common sense is you. They can lie to you as much as they want. But the bottom line is most are not doing very well financially. They can't afford the prices. And I'm going to give you a little insight to the podcast because it's I can't possibly cover it. We're probably going to break it down into 2 parts because it was almost 2 hours long and it was just too good for people to not watch the whole. If I publish a 2-hour video, a lot of people will save it. They'll watch 30, 40 minutes of it, and then they'll save it to come back. We look at the analytics. We know that it's very few that comes back. You might save for later, but I want everybody to listen to it because he really does he runs a business, right? And, his business depends on a lot of factors. So he did talk about a lot of what he doesn't put out there to his normal audience that he wants to buy his gold. And by the way, it's okay. It's his business. He's entitled to make money on gold. And I think that, I do believe that after talking to a lot of these people, it's probably a good idea to own some gold. I'm not betting that, I'm in real estate. But anyway, I will give you one little insight. A lot of people say that home prices won't come down because the cost to build a home is not coming down. And I want to think about this for a minute. Because most of the houses that are sold are not newly constructed houses. A lot of the houses that are sold are existing homes. People still sell houses. I don't care. We had a huge drop in the under 4% quarter over quarter, the under 4% mortgage rates, a huge drop in the last quarter where a lot of people either refinanced because they had this credit card debt, they sold their houses, they got HELOCs, so their payments aren't as cheap as what you're thinking that they are. But think about this a minute. The price of houses, the materials, he said, will not come down. Well, let me tell you something. The cost of insurance, the rising cost of HOAs, should you have one, the rising cost of property taxes, the rising costs for repairs and maintenance to a box that deteriorates as you're living in it is going to be one of the factors that drops the price. Because you see, there's no magic here. People have to fix these houses to sell them. There has to be a certain condition. I'm going to show you tonight that we're going to learn some things tonight. I'm going to show you foreclosed properties on a government website. We're going to talk about how you could get these houses as they're increasing. If you looked at them 6 months ago, there was nowhere near the amount of houses that is on the website now. And there are ways, if you are, a police officer, a firefighter, a teacher, there are ways that you can buy houses in certain areas from HUD at 50% of the list price. I want to show you that. I'm going to tell you how you have to qualify for it. We're going to go over that here in a little while. But those costs that are rising more and more every day are one of the exact reasons that I believe the home prices are going to soften. Not counting multiple other reasons. We're already seeing that interest rates, mortgage interest rates, 30-year fixed rate mortgage interest rates are coming down. But it's not doing anything. So we still have the same buyer demand out there, right? I mean, you can't just say, for the last 4 years, summer's been busy. November and December have been busy for sales months. It's quiet. Nationwide, it has fallen off a cliff. If you haven't seen it, I want to just briefly mention our last Saturday video with Danielle DiMartino Booth. I've gotten a lot of comments on that. You all really enjoy this video. She dives in deep as well. She's a Fed insider. She worked for the Dallas Federal Reserve. She worked for, she was an advisor to Richard Fisher, who was the president of the Fed. She worked for him for 9 years through the global financial crisis, the housing market crash. She wrote a book on it called Fed Up, where stating reasons why she thought the Federal Reserve was bad for America. But one of the things that we talked about that I think is really hitting home, and we're seeing it happen, is that, and I've said this in my podcast for years, the only thing that has really kept this housing market going have been the fact that people have full-time employment, the ones that are buying the houses anyway, and that they've been making a decent wage. They're spending more than, in a lot of cases, 50% of their income on their home, which is not good. But they're still squeezing into these houses with dual income. And, what Danielle said was that was going to break. And I want to just kind of pull up here a chart here, Joe, if you can just pull it up. And I want to just talk about this chart for a minute, because back in 2017, I think it was, I think I just started Sachs Realty. I've been in the real estate business, but I was with other brokerages, and I started my own company in 2017. Self-employed for 35 years. But I went to this conference in Nashville, Tennessee called IoT, Internet of Things. And it was geared towards building owners. And one of the things that they talked about was in commercial buildings, in the commercial space, a commercial building will be standing 80, 90, 100 years. It's quite possible in a lot of the cities in America where you can find the bulk of the building inventory is over 60, 70 years old. And what they had decided, or were starting to with the internet, is they were identifying long before COVID that employers were looking for ways to cut cost on employees, because it's the biggest expense for a business on their financial statement, the biggest. And what was happening with all the regulations and, the insurance requirements, as expensive as healthcare is to provide to employees, and all the other things that go along with it, and the whole need to have this massive HR department, and the costs that go along with that for the production that company gets out, it was really dipping into the, shareholders' returns. And one of the things that they were really starting to work on, and this chart here is the United States Employment Cost Index. And one of the things with this Internet of Things conference was all in how companies were downsizing their operations. This is way before the pandemic. They were talking about where it was called head down desk space, where in commercial real estate, you would go in and say, well, how many employees do you have? Because back not that long ago, each employee pretty much had their own office with a door, a desk and a door. And then you would have a waiting area, a reception area, a cantina, a kitchen area, conference room area, things like that. That would determine how much square footage they needed. And if the business was poised for expansion, well, they had to bake that into their lease or the ability to get a property that was much bigger than what they needed at the time if they were in a growth phase. Well, what we were finding was a lot of businesses were cutting down, and that's when WeWork came into, the concept of shared workspace, break down the walls, put people together. The last thing they wanted when we had the pandemic, because people didn't want to sit next to people, they wanted to closed office doors. But we're back to that now. So the pandemic sort of, really escalated this whole thing. Now, businesses still aren't prepared for the fact that their employees are working from home. And what a lot of businesses are planning to do is they're planning to find a way to get rid of that W-2 employee that's working at home and hire a 1099 subcontractor. That was what was going on back in 2017 at this conference. They were talking about over 50% of the workforce within 10 years. This was in 2017. The predictions were that over 50% of the workforce would be independent contractors. And if you can't see that is probably more apparent today or more, thought about today, and if that is not making you really second guess what you're hearing in headline news, maybe you need to think about it. But I want to look at this chart here. And if we look back in, here, the third quarter of 1982, and we'll just concentrate on the chart and just we'll agree that the peaks or the higher peaks or higher costs that employers have to bear for employees. So we can look at this chart and say, well, back in 1982, it was pretty high, the cost to have employees. That was more, especially back then, of the space that I'm talking about that they would rent. Well, then it kind of dips way low here in the later 80s, spikes again, and then, kind of goes up and down until we hit this period right here of all-time low. And this is back in the GFC. So when employers cut their staff, their costs go down. But what they've been doing is saying, well, how do we keep productivity up and continue sales without having people? Well, one of the things the GFC trained us on was to get used to not having customer service. Because prior to the GFC, we had customer service. You went out to places, you were waited on, you were happy, you thought they did a nice job, you went to a department store, you saw not just, I remember going into Macy's and the managers wore these flowers, these white flowers. You would literally go in, have you been into Macy's lately? It looks like an atomic bomb went off in Macy's, right? And especially when you go there on a Saturday, everything's mounted, clothes are everywhere where people just look at them and throw them or whatever. But back not that long ago in the early 90s, late 80s, you had a manager with a flower on in each department. You had staff that was there to help you. Man, it was like you were served, right? Go to Sears. They were standing in the outside of the aisles waiting to help you. But this era here in the great financial crisis taught people that we just have to fend for ourselves. And businesses said, yeah, we can really survive with low cost of having employees. But then look what happened here. After we got through the pandemic, the costs jumped right back up again. And, the businesses were spending more money on their employees working at home, buying them laptops, buying them cameras, all kinds of things were going on. And now it dropped again, but it's spiking back up again. But you can see here in 22, it was at a 40-year high, back to a 40-year high. There's a website that I want to take you guys to here, and it's these guys, they do a really nice job called dailyjobcuts.com. And you guys can check out their website on your own, but they go over layoffs by the day, and kind of companies that you haven't heard about, companies that you have heard about, and they talk about what's going on, and a couple of them are pretty notable, pretty staggering. Warner Brothers Discovery lays off 1,000 on July 16th, but you can go through this. The other column that I want you to look at here, which a lot of websites don't cover, is who's closing their doors. And I think this is interesting. And they, businesses they're just announcing left and right that they're shutting down. TD Bank closes 7 Massachusetts branches. These are jobs. These are managers, assistant managers, tellers, loan officers, financial planners. So when you look at, you can just go through this, but I think that we have to really look at what is going on more of a macro, scale that will affect the housing market, because this certainly will. I want to pull up here an article, and then I'm going to show you, we're going to dive into the MLS and show you what's going on with properties, with price reductions, and days on the market. Real stuff. I'm opening my back end of my MLS up to you tonight. But I do want to go over, one of my clients just sent me this article today, and his comment was, man, we just made it in time, didn't we? We just sold in time. And, and I think for anybody that has sold in the last month, you did pretty well. I think that what we're seeing now is sellers they're holding on, and we're going to talk to buyers tonight a little bit. I'm going to give you some advice on how to work the negotiations despite your agent. Okay. Sometimes if you're not happy with your agent, I'm not telling you to fire your agent, but you have to make decisions on your own, because agents do get paid commission. And I think we're right in that, period of time right now where I'm not telling you don't buy a house, and I'm not telling sellers to drop their price, but I'm just saying that it's not the same market that it was just a couple months ago. And when you see articles like this, and this, my client sent me this and said, like I said, we sold just in time. June home sales slump, pointing to a buyer's market as supply increases. Sales of previously owned homes dropped 5.4% in June compared with May. Guys, we're almost in August. We're still looking at backward-looking data. It's a slow move. It's a slow trend. House prices just don't crash overnight. But this is when we start seeing mainstream talk about this. One of our commenters, and we're going to pull it up here in a minute, was saying, "Yeah, but what about Zillow?" And I'm going to show you. There are a couple things that when we look at year-over-year home price increases, there are a lot of things that they're not really telling you about this. The stats. One, they're either doing a median or an average. A median sale price means it's in the middle. So if we take, 15 home sales or 14 home sales or 100 home sales, right in the middle of the pricing, the same amount just about on the bottom and the same amount on the top. That median price is what they're giving you. Or they may say the average sale price, which is where they take all of the totals of the sales prices and they divide it by the number of sales. The problem and why that's not an accurate way of determining whether home prices are going up and down is because, especially now, only people with money are buying houses. So a lot of them are buying more expensive houses. So when we look at, we would have to analyze all the demographics. We would have to break every home sale down, the composition of the buyers responsible for, signing the loan documents. There would be a lot more information that we would need to put in there to determine what is really happening in the housing market. So let's take a look at that. So on the screen right now is Zillow. This is the average Maryland home value, according to Zillow, went over 3.5% in the last year. That's a very interesting concept, because how do you determine what a home value is? Did you go inside all of them? I'm about to show you some houses that have been foreclosed. They're not worth what they're advertised for. In fact, I'm going to show you where they're sitting right now compared to what they're advertised for and what they're under contract for, because it's kind of unique with HUD that they tell you those things on one of their tabs. But people don't want to dive into this kind of data. They just want to pull stuff out of there and shove it to you. And if we just keep listening to the news and or your agent that's telling you that everything is great, you might need to look at some of this data. So let's just check it out. I think this is very interesting. So the forecast here said it's going up. For sale inventory, and this is you're gonna find this very interesting too. They pick and choose the data that they wish to provide you. So it says here for sale inventories 13,432, new listings 6,736. They're telling you that they're, basing it off a median sale to list ratio. The median sale price, May 31st of 2024, is $389,200. Well, the median list price, $411,333 in June. So they're just going to tell you that the prices went up. They're giving you what the sale price was. How about we look at what the list price was and compare it that way? But we're looking at sale price to list price, which is not the way to calculate this, folks. Then there's this other metric here. 48.8% of sales were over list price. Let me tell you what good agents are doing right now. They're pricing stuff low. If they're good agents, they're playing the game because they know the best way to get their sellers, pay attention sellers, the most amount of money is to price the house appropriately, price it low, and you'll get a little bidding war, right? That's what agents are doing. But anyway, so 48.8%, there's a fair amount of agents that did this. You can't just say that they were priced high and they went even higher. You can't say that. Again, it's a metric we would have to dive into and prove it or debunk it. 29.5% of sales were under list price. Now, you can also say the same for that, in all fairness, because if they overpriced the house in the first place and no one was willing to give it to them, well, it can work the other way as well. But let's dive in. So I want you to pay attention to this stuff. Now, I could spend, I don't want to lose you guys in the boring details of this, but I just want to show you what we're going to do here is, all right, so we serve about 9 markets pretty heavily here in Maryland, including Baltimore City. We're not licensed in D.C. We have referral partners that are in D.C., but in Maryland, it's enough for me to handle. A lot of agents feel the need to be licensed in 3 or 4 states. I think that's a waste of time for most agents. I think they just prefer to be sitting in CE class instead of working and running a bona fide, legitimate business. If that upsets you, tough. But there are circumstances where if you lived in Montgomery County, you may need DC and Virginia or in PG County, certain areas. So there are exceptions to the rule. But if you have to drive 45 minutes or an hour or an hour and a half to get to another state because you may have one. You're not helping a client. If you don't know the area, you're hurting the people. If you don't know, you have to be able to know what is going on. Two things when you get your real estate license in any state, all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Number one, you have to know what's going on a national level, and most agents don't look at any of this. The second part of that is you have to know what's happening in your market. And that to me is even more important because you need to be able to advise them as to, and we can go further and say that you should have recent transactions. I put in here Baltimore County. So we're just going to focus on this. It's a great area. It's where one office is located, and we have a satellite office, shared space in Howard County. But this is where we sit. And but anyway, I just I didn't want to go too far in the weeds, but I did include everything here in an improved property. So it could be a condo or a townhouse or a detached house. But the important thing here is I went in the clutch of everything, like the meat and potatoes of what Marylanders, the highest market demand in price for Marylanders is not $1 million house, okay? Maybe in California, $1 million house is our $200,000 house. But most of our buyers fall in that $200,000 to $650,000 range in Baltimore County. Now, if you go to a more expensive county, that changes. But there are a couple things. I didn't do coming soon because nobody's manipulated that yet. But I do want to just kind of go through here now. On each page of the MLS, there are 25 listings. All right. So what I want to point out here is that I want to point out the price because I went 200,000 to 650. A down arrow means that they've had at least one price reduction. An up arrow means that they increased their prices. And mostly what we see the increase in prices right now are from new builders, new home builders. So let's just have a look here. Starting at 200,000. This column over here, the DOM or CDOM, means the days on the market or the collective or cumulative days on the market for that property. So what a lot of agents will do is they'll try and you'll see some of this as we're clicking through, but a lot of agents try and play games. They'll list it for a week. If it doesn't get action, they'll take it down. They'll relist it. It has a new MLS number. It gets a new hit on Zillow and all the other sites, gets a whole fresh new saves. People think, oh, there's another house that came on the market until, their agent or they say, wait a minute, I've seen this house before. If their agent's bombarding them with houses, they may not pick up on it, but it's a way to kind of manipulate the data. But let's just have a look here. These down arrows, okay? So when we're looking at price reductions, this was 229.9. It's now 205, 225, 210, 230, 215. Not that big of a drop, but I mean, it's a drop. Here we go here. We'll take a look at this property. This is probably new construction. Nope, it's not. A lot of times what will happen, this was temporarily off the market, back to active. A lot of times what happens here is they actually fix something that needed to be fixed, and now they think their property's worth more money. So maybe they put a new HVAC system in. They say, well, we just put an HVAC system in, so it's not worth $199 anymore. It's worth $224. But look at these days on the market, huh? I mean, look at 91, 61, 62, 79, 204. I mean, this is going up. All right. So you may say, but that's one page. Well, let's just continue here. All right. That's page 3. Look at these arrows going down, guys. This is price reductions, right? Again, 279, 264, 283, 265, 265, 50 days on the market, and it's still not under contract. So what happens, the trend that happens here, I hate to tell you, but the prices, you just keep saying, well, maybe we ought to drop it another $10,000. Maybe we ought to drop it $50,000 and get people bidding on it, right? I'm not telling you that it's going to work in your case. Ask your agent, what should I price it at to really not just kind of incrementally. And people are like, well, it's been on the market for 45 days, now 60 days, now 90 days. Now we'll wait. We'll watch it. We'll wait. We now have more inventory to choose from. We're looking at 4.5 months, I think, nationwide, where the average was a month and a half. It's gone up 300% in a very short period of time. Just wait. More is coming. All right, I'm not going to bore you with much more of this, but I just want to continue because I want you to see that this is still consistent. This is the back end, guys. I'm not doing anything. I'm not manipulating anything. This is the real facts. And as we go up, you see prices coming down, right? Coming down. So welcome, guys. Welcome to the new market that we have. You can have companies like Zillow. Now, here's the thing with Zillow. And look, I'll just advance here to page 14, just so you can, let's just go to the last page. These couple that are going up, we can click on them. That's a brand new construction. Again, these builders think they're fancy. They're raising prices. Guess what? That's about to end for you as well. Zillow, how they make money. I could show you a text message on my phone from just a couple days ago. In fact, my salesperson said, this is my last text message. A zip code just opened up in your area, and we want to sell it to you. Sell you these leads, these hot leads. If Zillow told you that the bottom was falling out of the housing market, guys, you wouldn't be feeding their leads. You'd be waiting. So you have to consider, here I am, a real estate broker telling you this stuff, and I can either lie to you or I can tell you what I think or what I see is really happening and what I really believe. I'm talking to agents all over the country. I just talked to our agent out in Colorado today. I said, what's going on? How's it going? He said, man, he goes, I'll tell you what. He said, boy, you're right. Things have really changed. These are people, these are agents that said I was wrong. They told me I was wrong. I was getting emails from people, asking me why I'm telling people this stuff. Why are you feeding them this BS? Look, I am not controlling the housing market with our small channel and voice. Okay? This isn't me affecting 4 million home sales, guys. This is you. Finally, people are waking up and realizing I can't afford this. We're broke. I'm tapped out. If I go into, I'm not comfortable with this. I may not be employed. I'm watching my job be, other people in my company being laid off, but they're telling me I'm fine. People have to really pay attention here because this is a massive decision that you make that will affect you the rest of your, I won't say the rest of your life because it won't. There are a lot of people that you'll recover. If you make a mistake, you go through bankruptcy, you get foreclosed on, whatever happens to you, I promise you, you'll come out of it on the other side as long as you keep your head together. But you don't want to do it if you don't have to. Why go through that? Why put yourself through the pain? Now, I'm going to teach you guys a couple things. So when I was a real estate investor, I followed this site day and night. This is HUD Home Store. So when FHA loans are foreclosed, most of the time the houses end up on this HUD Home Store. And the nice thing about this, and a lot of people don't know about it, is that you can buy these houses as homeowners. In fact, you're protected. A lot of people ask me, Todd, what would you do if you were in charge? If you were, work, if you were the secretary of HUD, what would you do? How would you bring affordability into housing? I like what HUD does here because They protect the owner occupants. And some people say, well, that's not, they can do that because they own these houses now. But people say, well, you can't make laws that limit who can buy somebody's house. And some other people say on the other side, say, well, sure you can. Investors shouldn't be able to compete with home buyers that would live in a house that want to raise a family. They shouldn't be competing with an investor that has cash that can buy 1,000 or 2,000 properties a week, or as many as they can. They should protect people from that. But then you have people on the other side, and I'm kind of split down the middle with it, is then what about capitalism? Well, we don't really have capitalism anyway. We should. Most people get pissed off at that word because they don't even understand what capitalism is or free market. We're in manipulated markets, controlled markets. So if we're going to control the market and you're going to charge somebody $60,000 a year for property taxes or $6,000 a year, hell, you may as well tell them that they can't sell the house to who they want to. You may as well just protect the buyers and tell them that Wall Street companies aren't allowed to buy houses for a period of time. But HUD does that themselves. They protect buyers from investors. The bad thing, guys, is by the time they get to this website, they're destroyed. We'll look at some pictures. Because like I've told you, when people are getting ready, and I'm not laughing at them losing their house, but when people are losing their house, they're not fixing anything. Things are falling apart. So the bad thing is when you buy these houses, you have to get like renovation loans. But this seller, HUD, will work with you. They're okay with a 203K process. They'll give you time to do that, where a regular seller, a standard sale, won't. Well, let's just look at this. So if you go to HUDHomestore.gov, you can change your states where you're looking. You can put your criteria in, and you can sort by various ways. But what I want to show you here is I have a couple things set up here. As I want to look at this particular house, and I have Maryland pulled up, and you can do it by map, by the way. You can put the state in, and you see these locations. But let's go ahead and look at this house. So sort of like what you would see on Zillow, but not as comprehensive. But they do show you pictures of the house, and you got to zoom in and look at it, and you can see this one's not in that bad of shape. On the outside, it's got some overgrowth. They don't give you 160 pictures like you would see on Zillow. But your information is here. Now, what I want to look at here is that you see these X's. So is this in a revitalization area? Is it on the National Register? Is it an opportunity zone? And this I want to kind of hone in on, because if you're looking for a house and you're one of the people that I mentioned, they have a good neighbor next door. And basically, this program here, you have that pulled up, Joe, about good neighbor next door. Is that on there? It's a couple tabs down. It says about good neighbor on the page. You having a hard time finding it? Anyway, if you're a law enforcement officer, a teacher, pre-kindergarten through 12th grade, if you're a firefighter, emergency medical technician, basically what happens is if this property is in a revitalization area, and we'll go back to the actual property. So if you're looking at this check mark where it says opportunity zone or revitalization area, if you see a check mark there, if you're one of in the careers that I mentioned, you can buy the house for 50% off. And here's what they do. It's a great program. Here's what they do for you. I think this is fantastic. I do think some things they do right. Here's what they do for you. They will give you, you're going to sign an affidavit that says you'll live in the house for at least 3 years. They take the 50% of the house price. So if it's $200,000, you get it for $100,000. They take $100,000 in a second mortgage. that at the end of 3 years it's forgiven. I mean, that's just fantastic. But I think, so I want to go back to the page, the property page, Joe. I'm on it. You don't have to do that. Then I want to go to Zillow and look at this property. So Zillow has this property listed for $662,000. It was foreclosed. That's what we just looked at on HUD. But here's what I want to look at. This property, if we follow it, show more here. Look at this. Look at the history. Was sold in 2003. Was listed for sale in 08, 09, 09, removed in 09, listed for sale in 2010. Price change, price change, price change, listing removed, listed for sale in 2011. Price change, listing removed, listed for sale, listing removed, listed for sale. Now, I don't know these people that lost this home, but this is how it goes. They knew probably long ago that they were going to lose this home, and it finally happened. So when you're tracking properties and you're looking at properties, if you're not looking at the history of the property in whatever platform you're looking at, whether it's Realtor.com, Zillow, whether it's your agent giving you information, you don't know what's going on with the sale. So you need to know, has that property been sold multiple times? I was just talking with somebody and they said, yeah, they're under contract on a purchase. They got into some negotiations. The buyer was able to win, get more discount after went through inspection, was able to get an inspection. The important part was that in April, a contract fell through. We're in July. This seller had a buyer in April, had, whether it was an as-is inspection or whatever, but whatever the reason is, they terminated the contract in April. If a buyer didn't know that going in, they may not have been able to get the deal that they got on the property. So the reason I'm showing you this twofold, check out the HUD Home Store. Become familiar with the site. If you're a buyer, is a beautiful opportunity for you. If a foreclosure pops up in your town, that you can get a really good deal. And not only that, but you can get a loan, a renovation loan for the property, and actually have the seller, which is HUD, work with you to help you through that process with no pressure of investors. Now, they only protect you for 30 days. After 30 days, so when you're looking at this, we go back to the listings here. If you see here, it says listing period extended, okay? See right here, listing period extended. So the nonprofits and owner occupants are protected for 30 days. I think it used to be 21. It's now 30 days. But when you look at, this extended, that means all bidders. See that? All bidders, right? And then you'll see where, some of them will say, that it's limited to owner occupants. So let's take a couple questions and then we'll continue right along. I think we're going to try and take some callers tonight too. So if you want to come on, I think Joe has published a link. All right. So Kav, good to see you. Thanks for the super chat, man. I haven't heard from you in a little while. People heard about the bubble pre-08 and they denied it because any hardship makes people quiver. If you mentioned a bubble pre-08, you were called pessimistic or doomsdayer, much like today. And thank you for that. And you're exactly right. But I have to be 100% transparent with you and say, I didn't see it. And I mean, and a lot of people And for me, working in the business, all I saw were agents negotiating on hoods of cars, multiple offers on my properties. Homes that you would think would sell for $550 were selling for $649 back then. Things were going in hours, days, just like this. There was nothing unique to 2020 through 2022. Even in 2023, was nothing unique about this frenzy, only it was much worse. The bubble was much bigger, but houses were still affordable back then. But when I got up every single day and went to work, I didn't see it coming. And that was because I was working in the trenches. I mean, I was buying the houses, flipping the houses. I mean, I was paying a lot. There was an area around us, and it's called Hamden. It was the hottest. They brought in the Mark train, and close by, and people that were working in DC were looking in Baltimore because they could commute quickly. And this place Hamden, I was buying shells for $135,000, which is insanity. We were selling these houses for over $400,000, which is insanity back then. 06, 07, even into 2008, right? Even though prices were still dropping, it took a little while for it to really show up. And a lot of that, guys, and I've said this before, and I'm not trying to bash my industry because I love this business. I don't love the fact when I started my company in 2017, we were members of multiple boards. When I say boards, every county has a board, local board. You've got the National Association of Realtors, which if you want to be on the multiple list, you had to be a member of. Then you had the state board, Maryland Realtors. Used to be called MAR, Maryland Association of Realtors. Then they rebranded Maryland Realtors. Then you have a local, association that you belong to. If you have an agent in another county, you have to become a member of that board in order for that agent to be able to stay there, or they can't leave their brokerage. I mean, it's like everything's locked down. You got to pay more money. Or you can just have them come to your board, which could be an hour away or an hour and a half away. And the purpose of the board is they can go in, they can go to the store, they can buy rider signs, they can get lock boxes, they can conduct business at that local board, right? So that's the purpose of the boards, more so back then, less so today. But the point of the matter is that our industry, so this board came to me and they said, look, congratulations on starting your own brokerage. I would like you to apply for a position. You should be on the board. You should run for an office. I said, you don't want me. They later really got upset with me. I can tell you why, but they said, you don't want me. I said, you don't want me because I would raise dues, I would raise CE, and I would thin out. I would, advocate for change to where leadership had to be responsible for these agents running around doing whatever the hell they want. I can remember when I first opened up my doors, we grew very quickly. We put a halt to it, got rid of people. But I remember getting a check in the mail one day and wondering, what the hell is this for? The agent didn't even feel it was necessary to upload the contract of sale. I'm like, hello? I didn't even know this yet. I'd put an end to that. There would be none of that. And if you guys are in the industry, you know what I'm talking about. This is true. But our industry does in some ways help slow down the drop. It can work in the opposite direction too. It can slow down the increase, but mostly the drop. And the reason is because so many agents don't do very many transactions. And what happens is if you haven't done a transaction in quite some time, you don't know what is going on in the market. So you get that buyer that's salivating to buy, and the agent that's salivating to sell, and they're not doing enough due diligence to realize they don't have to necessarily give the price that they did to get the house. So that in some way does impact the market. Now, I'm not here to correct that. I don't know how to correct that, other than you, the buyer and the seller, have to know what's going on, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. Anyway, let's take some more questions. But, Kav, you're exactly right. By the way, I mean, again, I mean, you know, we will always sell houses, an up market, a down market. I'm just, you know, really, I think everybody in a transaction should feel good about the transaction. I just believe it should be a win for all parties. It shouldn't be a win for one party. It should be a win for all parties. It should be a fair price, a fair deal, a reasonable transaction by professionals bringing buyers and sellers together, and, you know, and making sure that each agent on their respective sides protects the interest of their buyer or their client. It's a simple concept. What's that? Oh, there's a follow-up, Cobb. Okay, great. Homeowners who chose vacations over home remodeling will get abused when the market goes south. Market value on a 25-year-old kitchens and bathrooms. The markets in New York has a massive wake-up call on hold. And yeah, I mean, Cobb, this is exactly what we were saying earlier, where Peter Schiff had to admit that, yeah, you know, when we're looking at doing renovations, which now, by the way, these sellers are going to be forced to do. They're going to have to do these renovations to sell, a lot of them. And so we're going to see the costs come down because, you know, they would rather just give them a better price and let the buyers work with it. And that's the other thing. So, and I said this last week, if I'm a buyer and I go through an inspection and I don't need repairs necessarily for my loan, and I can get a check back from the sellers for repairs and replacements, I'm going to do that. I do not want a seller doing half-ass repairs on something that I'm going to buy and pay for in a 30-year mortgage payment, right? If I'm going to do the repairs, I want to do them the way I want them done. And if you're a seller, you should prefer that, because what's going to happen is if you don't do it right, or it's noticeable, or you open up a bigger can of worms, because that's possible. Well, yeah, well, we thought it was this, but now really you got more of a problem. So instead of being $25,000, it's going to be $35,000 or $40,000. You're better off too, just giving the buyers a check. Hey, look, what's going to make you happy here? Let's just do it that way. Drop the price. If the lender won't allow you to give, you know, a lot of money back, then drop the price. And by the way, you may want to ask your agent, if you drop your price or you give a seller contribution, that is, of cash at $25,000 or $30,000, where's the commission being paid out? Is it being paid out at the higher price, or after, you know, what you're going to end up with after you give the buyer $25,000? So you may want to have that conversation. Hey, Todd, I'm 27, single, live in SoFlo, a high 700s credit score, and fringe six-figure income, RN, and I want to own, not rent. I'm considering buying land and building on it. Honest thoughts on that venture. So, great question. You know, there are a couple things. If I were not experienced at construction, or I didn't have somebody that I really trusted to be involved in the process, building a house can be very risky, especially if the builder is financially insolvent. So you really have to do your due diligence there, because you can pay double. You know, if they don't pay their contractors, there'll be liens on your property. Mechanics liens can even show up. I mean, I'm not going to get into, each state. I don't know the laws, but mechanics liens can even show up after you settle, within a certain period of time, meaning that the subcontractor building the house didn't get paid and they're coming to you for it, or they're going to slap a lien on your house. Maybe look at panelized construction, It's a lot different than it used to be. A lot of times modular houses, yeah, I'm not talking about trailer homes, manufactured homes, things that have wheels or frames or don't have foundations. I'm talking about modular homes where they build a house in a warehouse. We've got a video on it too if you want to watch. A friend of mine builds modulars here in Maryland, but they actually bring it on trucks and they assemble it very quickly on the property. The home is never exposed to weather. It's a lot of benefit to modular or panelized houses. Your risk is a lot less if you're going to do something like that. I will tell you, negotiate heavy on your land, because in times like this, you can really get great deals on land prices. So negotiate on the land if you're going to do that. Make sure you get a real good price on that. The other thing you want to do is check and make sure there's no building moratoriums, because a lot of times people will build or they'll buy a lot and they're like, yeah, I'm going to secure the lot, but they don't realize there's a building moratorium in that county or city because of overcrowdedness with schools. Also ask what the permit fees will be to build a new house. So you want to know, is there an impact fee of X amount of dollars per square foot? How much are the permits? What is the impact fee for fire and safety? There's a fee for that for the police department, the fire department. So there are costs that go into building. Make sure you know that. What are the water and sewer hookup fees going to cost? What's it going to cost from bringing it in from the road into the property if it's not already there? So usually there's there you go. There's our video on panelized housing. So it's a great video, by the way. Goes over from the beginning to the end, just about. We were actually on the location of the build, watching there's the factory, watching the whole thing be built out. So it's a great way to build a house. You can really save a lot of money. The biggest thing I like about it is that you can pretty much pick your house from, start to finish. Where when you go to a lot of these big builders, some of them you don't have much say. You're very limited on what you can do. You can work with them. You can add things to yourself later. You don't have to finish out things. So you can build more of a basic house, which gets your costs down and secures your property. And then the flip side of that is, you can do your upgrades and your higher end finishes later down the road when you have some cash to invest. Life may throw you a curveball and you may not do it. But if your house is brand new, chances are you're going to be able to live for 6 or 7 years at least without spending any money at all in at least your, the home that you gain your occupancy permit in. I mean, you're going to have to do enough to finish your permits out, get your loans and your occupancy permits. But I am for those people that, want to build a house and have a little say, a little customization, it's and you're making enough money to do it. And, but make sure if you're going to go the stick build route, where the whole thing ground up, is, you're hiring a contractor for, just make sure that they're financially solvent. So great question. Great question. All right. A couple more. Who exactly is considered unemployed? Does that apply to part-time workers? Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've got another slide here that, of course, I guess, I don't know whether do we have the slide on it, Joe, where it shows what full-time employment is all about? Maybe you can pull that up. Let's see here. So, the United States government considers a full-time job 34.3 hours. Which I think is just another way of manipulating this data. Who the hell works 34 point? How can you work 34.3 hours? You're almost missing an 8-hour day to make it 40. Here in Maryland, I mean, our full-time work is, I mean, we're over 40 hours. If you're salary, I mean, we don't work 40 hours. So that's a good question. What is full-time employment? Well, who is unemployed? You know, they stop counting a person as being unemployed after they're unemployed for a year. So, you know, when you were looking at employment rates, you know, that's a big deal, right? Many people have multiple jobs. They don't just have one job. They have a side hustle. They wait tables. They do other things. They do domestic services, babysit, clean houses. A lot of people have more than one job. And we'll see all this stuff come out. It's all going to come out. Median home price in 1940 was $10,600. Run through an inflation calculator, that comes to $650,000 plus in 2024. Is housing really undervalued? So, you know, I mean, you could ask this question several different ways. I think the problem is that salaries haven't kept up with inflation. So when you look at another argument, and this we get into with Peter Schiff on this coming Saturday video, is, you know, debt is inflation. It's a tax. Because when people, you know, when you're financing something and interest rates rise, the Fed wants you to believe that inflation will decrease if they raise rates. That number is not accurate. Raising rates increases inflation because the cost of business goes up. The cost of getting money goes up. Financing money goes up. And across the board, product prices go up. So raising rates is not deflationary. And we know that because when they drop the rates, nothing miraculous happens. We get to a point of inflation where we get disinflation. They say, well, what happened here, guys, is we're at our 2% range, but that's year over year. We need deflation. We don't need disinflation. We don't need year over year reduction in inflation. We need prices to go down, or we need salaries to go up. And what I showed you earlier in this video was the chart of costs of employees to employers. So if you think they're just going to arbitrarily, you're going to just get a raise tomorrow because the cost of living is through the roof, and I know it's 9 times your income to buy a house and you can't afford it, so we're just going to triple your income for you, it's probably not going to happen. So when we're looking at, you know, however we're looking at prices, whether they're undervalued, overvalued, who's determining that? You, the buyers. When you say, well, I don't care whether you say this is a good price or not, I can't afford it. At that point, we got a problem. At that point, we go, oh, yeah, you can't afford it. Well, now what? If you want to sell it, what do you have to do? You have to drop your price, because investors are not going to be giving these high prices to these houses where they can't make money on the rents, because you can't afford that either. One of the things that Jay Powell said was shelter inflation will have to come down. Hello, that means rents. Shelter inflation is rent. And I'm sorry if you invested with one of these operators that were promising you high returns year over year. Their capital calls now are begging for money, or they're going to have to sell for 30 cents on the dollar, because they built these, or, you know, hope to build these outrageous, posh, luxurious $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 apartments that people are like, I can't afford that. You know, I think it was like 2021, millions of millennials moved back home. Millions. They're still living at home. So, it's the practical common sense approach here is, can you afford it? So you might say, yeah, well, the houses are selling now. Well, I just showed you price reductions in days on the market. If the demand of people that could afford it were there, we wouldn't be having that conversation. So, excuse me. That's what happens when you talk from 7 o'clock in the morning. All right, let's answer some more questions as long as I have a voice. Here we go. Lisa, thank you so much for your super chat. We're in rural Middle Tennessee, and amazingly hot, a contract on our house at a high price. We're downsizing. How long do we have to wait in our area for land and small homes to go down? There are, and I don't know where you are in Middle Tennessee, whether you're in like Murfreesboro or Clarksville or where, around Middle Tennessee's Nashville, Franklin, not knowing exactly where you are. Nashville has had this phenomenal growth, this influx from California. I think, if you go downtown Nashville and talk to people and ask them where they live or where they're from, a huge percentage are going to tell you that they moved from California. For probably, I don't know, almost a decade, hundreds of people a day have been moving to Nashville, the area of Nashville. A lot of companies are moving there. But again, if you're in downtown Nashville, you almost have a teardown for $1 million, something that needs complete renovation. If you go to Franklin, it's even worse. It's ridiculous. They want, I was, talking with, one of our agents in Nashville, and you can look at, land, $15, $20 million for 10 acres. It's crazy. A lot of wealthy people are moving to that area. I don't know enough about it, to tell you what the predictions would be. I would say, you have to follow the job market. Look at what's happening downtown. Because if people don't have jobs, they can't afford it, right? So, I would look at, wage growth, job growth in the Nashville area. I know in Clarksville, I think it is, there's an Army base, pretty sure. That area is developing. It's pretty hot. But how long to wait in your area for land, I don't know. Land is extremely expensive, and I don't know anything about developing land in Middle Tennessee. But if you go to our website, we do have someone right in Nashville that you could, call on and tell him I told you to give him a call, and he'll be glad to help you and give you a way more educated opinion on that area. Hey, just go to SachsRealty.com, click on the map. We have 2 agents in the area. So TJ Ojimahoman, he is a great agent, really nice to talk to, and he'll be able to point you in the right direction. All right. What else we got? A little different show tonight. Hope you guys are getting some value from these podcasts. We have some great shows coming up. Great interviews. Brad, when is the Fed going to reduce rates? Well, that's even a divided story, but it looks like maybe we'll get a 1/4 point, reduction, 25 basis points in September, maybe. And, maybe another time this year, but that's not really going to do a whole lot. I don't want you to think it's going to be something great. People are struggling. Back in 2007, right before the 2008 crash, the Fed dropped the rates to 1%. And, it didn't do much. It didn't save anything. So I think the damage has been done. I think that the banks, Peter Schiff says that all banks are insolvent. I don't, from the people that I have interviewed, they all sort of feel the same thing, same way that banks are going to be struggling. Commercial real estate still taking a big bath. We haven't even seen that play out. We know that that's affecting multifamily housing. It's affecting office space. We are starting to see retail spaces, lease signs going up. Businesses are shutting down and closing. Some of them are very big. So you're about to see probably some big board ups and vacancies in your neighborhood shops, shopping districts. You can report on that. You guys could drop comments if you're seeing that happening in your area. I can go up. We have a street close to us called York Road. You could literally drive up and down York Road, and for lease signs it's staggering. How many businesses are shut down, and some of them. You drive by at 7:00 in the evening. Some of these restaurants, sub shops, pizza shops, they are dead. I'm talking nobody in the parking lot ever. It's like, there's only so much Grubhub. Grubhub is not keeping these places alive. So it's just a matter of time. I think we're going to see these massive board ups and, this big opportunity for people to buy. I don't know what you're going to do with it. That's the problem. So people ask me all the time, they're like, well, what do I buy in the commercial space? You need so much money. First of all, if you're not owner occupied and you're buying it as an investment, you might need to put 50% down. So if you buy a $3 or $4 million building, you're going to need $1.5 million, $2 million in cash. And then you have to develop it and go through a very costly process, have engineers and architects. And, it's not that the rich are going to pick this stuff up. Very wealthy people are going to scarf this stuff up because they'll steal it at such ridiculous prices because they're the only ones that can make anything happen with it. And the banks are just going to write down the losses. So it probably will affect a lot of regional banks. 70% of a bank's balance sheet on average is commercial real estate. That's a huge, huge liability. And I don't know, will we continue bailing them out? Probably. I think it'd just be one consolidation after another. Our bank, not that far away, we still get checks. We're not all electronic funds transfers or, direct wire deposits. So we get checks. So our bank, which is close by, sent a 90-day letter. I meant to bring it and show you guys, but they gave me a 90-day letter that said basically because of all the technologies that they are closing their office down. And they're like, but don't worry, your branches in Parkville and Pikesville are still going to remain open. Well, yeah, well, it'll only take me about 30 to 40 minutes to get to either one of those branches one way and during the day because of the traffic around the Baltimore Beltway sucks. It's awful. They're constantly doing road work to it, and people are always smashing into things because they're driving 130 miles an hour because there is no speed limit since the pandemic around the Baltimore Beltway. And if you guys, maybe it's not like that in your city or area, but it is here. And so anyway, so we're constantly disrupted. And this bank has the audacity to say that I should be able to drive 30 to 40 minutes one way to do my banking transactions, and we're just going to stop a relationship with them. So, which won't affect them. But if a lot of people say the same thing, it surely will affect them. But they're just pushing everything online, and we don't use Zelle for our business. The hell do I care about Zelle? I'm not paying my bills through Zelle. Anyway, maybe I will eventually. YouTube loan officer Dan Frio keeps saying that there will not be any crash. Also, not to listen to all the people, not to listen to Todd. He said that many times. What is your take? Well, I just gave it to you. My whole take has been, that I think that it's coming. It's here. It's here. So I've also said that I will be the first to admit I'm wrong in a year if, this doesn't happen. But it's happening. We're looking at price reductions. It's going on right now. Inventory, that's the only thing we're missing. It's going up big time. Inventory is increasing month over month. We're now at pre-pandemic levels of inventory. which is, 2019, we were actually going into a recession. Hint, hint. What did Ben Carson ever do for HUD? Well, he pissed a lot of people off. I like Ben Carson, but he really, I did an interview with the director of, well, I'm not going to talk about that. Anyway, I'll tell you, Ben knew, I don't think he knew anything about real estate. Amazing brain surgeon back in the day. He wrote a fantastic book that I read. I've met Ben Carson. I've talked with Ben Carson when he was a secretary of HUD. I talked with Ben Carson. I was at an event with him, and we chatted for, a decent amount of time about the housing industry and, the red tape that is involved. Everybody wants affordable housing, guys. But the government, you've got what I consider affordable housing, which is a 1,400 or 1,600 square foot house in a neighborhood that, there's 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, where, the kids share the bathrooms, and, that's affordable housing in a quaint neighborhood. And then we say, well, affordable housing, we're going to pop up government subsidized housing, and it's, everybody knows that it's subsidized housing, and, and it's not affordable housing at all. It's very costly because there's a lot of regulations that come with it. And, and so how do you deal with it? And everybody says, well, I want affordable housing, but not here. I don't want it in my neighborhood. Put it in that neighborhood or that neighborhood, Don't put it in my neighborhood. This is a problem. And this was, in fact, the conversation that we had was the red tape for developers. And when the war, soldiers were coming back from war in World War II, the government actually cut the red tape they had back then, which I'm pretty sure was a lot less than now. I don't know if they had the spotted owl back then, or the 6-legged frog or whatever. But they had regulations that they cut, and they incentivized builders to develop houses. Make more housing, make more, smaller, lower cost housing. And, not being labeled as, well, you're living in the subsidized house. No, you're living in a house that you can afford to pay for. It's brand new. We're going to build it for you. We're going to cut the red tape. We're going to remove some of these ridiculous burdens. We're going to not make it 10 years before you can develop a piece of property. We're actually going to fast track it, and you can develop that property in a month, in 60 days. We're going to help you with the infrastructure. We're going to get it installed. We're going to get this thing going, and we're going to build houses. We're going to cut down some trees. If you've ever been up in a helicopter or an airplane, if you're not flying over Arizona, we have a lot of trees. We need housing. We need affordable housing, not 5,000, 6,000 square foot boxes that our kids can't afford. And you may be able to afford it because you've been booming in your boomer business for 40 years, but your equity's in your house. Your kids can't take it over. They can't afford the electric bill. Hello? They can't afford the property tax bill. They can't afford the insurance bill on your house. So I hope you pay it off when you give it to them, and I hope you give it to them right, that they don't have to pay taxes that they can't afford. That you have some kind of tax planning or, succession planning. Can I write a book? Oh. I have a couple books that I've actually started. You just need time to sit down and write. Think. What I have are courses coming out, which is, I'm trying to get those finished because I think I can deliver that quicker than a book. And the kind of courses that I'm going to have will be affordable. There will be a cost, but it will be very affordable. Trust me. But I feel that if you don't pay for education, you don't value it. You can listen to things here on the YouTube, but I think that we buy books because we want to own the book. They thought that bookstores would go out of business, and though they're few and far between, you have Amazon, you get a physical book. You don't rent it. You don't get it from the library anymore. Most people, they buy the book because they want to own the education. And what we're putting together is something that we can easily give you in digestible courses that will help you to buy or sell a property without a real estate agent. And I'm not advocating that you do that, but if you're hiring one, unfortunately, I feel like you need to know some things that, give you more of an edge where you don't get screwed. Because we know a lot of people have gotten screwed. I hear your stories. I get your emails. I get your calls. It's heartbreaking. You get people that call me that just bought a house in 21 and 22 and they're underwater. That's the other thing. It's going to take a while to do. You say, well, home prices come down. I mean, if we had 20 million or 25 million houses since the pandemic sold in America, and we have a 30% of those that try and sell those houses, depending on when they bought them, they may not be able to sell without coming to the settlement table with a check. And that's going to take some time to wash out because you may need to do a short sale with the bank, which means that you pay them less than what you owe. So that will take some time to slow it down too. But you're going to see this inventory hit the market like the one that was foreclosed on. On the market, off the market, on the market, off the market, on the market, off the market. Manipulate the data, change the MLS, drop the price $2,000, $50, $50,000, $75,000, $80,000. Now we're way under what we owe. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to wash it out. If you guys thought that this could stay like that, man, I tell you what. People that don't think that what goes up doesn't come down, that doesn't think that happens. You're not looking at history. You're not looking back in time. This would be the only time it's ever happened in the history of our country that we don't have a downturn. Of course, it's going to be a downturn. We're in election year, guys. Come on. Somebody's going to get this dropped right in their lap. And they're going to go, oh my, we're in a recession. I just did a 22-month live-in renovation. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Now, nobody buying. So I'm taking, Raymond, that you were renovating this to sell. Living through renovations. Don't marry a contractor if you don't want to live through renovations. I tell contractors all the time, if they're renovating houses where people are living in them, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to redo my kitchen and it requires ripping it out, you should ask them, where are you going to stay while we renovate your kitchen? And they go, well, we're going to stay right here. We're going to live through it. No way. Not under my freaking contract. You got to move out. Because we show up at 6 to 6:30 in the morning while you're trying to get your kids off to school, making lunches. And when things don't go exactly the same way, I'm going to listen to you complaining the entire time. We're going to get on each other's nerves, and it's going to end badly because construction is not fun to live through. You can put up plastic walls. You can do all kinds of things, but dust gets everywhere. It's a mess. I'm going to tell you, if you're going to do a kitchen renovation, you better order everything and have it staged in your garage before you start. Now, everything, down to the faucet. Your appliances too, which means your contractor is going to put them in, not the appliance company. Because things come in damaged. Open the boxes. Don't just say the boxes are there and then you open them up and you find out one of the cabinets is busted and now you got to wait another 6 weeks to get it. Or your appliance has a big ding in it and they only have 2 of them in America because you picked the, black and, silver stainless with the fancy bells and whistles. And it's going to take another 6 to 8 weeks to get that. So make sure you have everything in your garage and make sure you have everything checked beforehand. HGTV has kept, Jojo, HGTV has kept the housing market going. Yeah, well, this is one of the things that over the last decade or so, since the GFC, that has really fueled so many investors, mom and pop investors, young investors, to get into the housing business. Man, they're going to have a rude awakening. So we talk to investors all the time. Oh, I do want to mention something. I'm glad we're talking about Director HUD. RR. I don't know, man. I don't think they could handle me. I want to, for those that are listening, that are real estate agents or landlords, I want to mention something to you because we're kind of going through this right now. We're always trying, obviously I have a podcast, we get a lot of calls, a lot of questions, but we're always trying to navigate to protect our clients and protect ourselves because all this craziness going on with NAR. I see disturbing articles. I'm like, I can't even read that one. But people that have tenants in place in their apartments or their house, and they want to sell the house, a lot of times you're going to want to take, if you don't have a buyer already, you're going to want to take photos and videos to market the property because that's how people shop. Well, if you have a tenant in place, that means that you're going to be photographing their personal belongings, their content. What we're really suggesting now with our landlords, moving forward, if you have a lease, get with your attorney, put something in the lease that the tenant signs ahead of time that says, should you sell the property, that you have their permission. I'm not a lawyer, but their permission. We had an attorney drafted up or reviewed a addendum to this, but to give permission for you or your listing company, your brokerage, to advertise that house, because if their bong is in the corner of a closet or something, and it's going to be on the World Wide Web, Of course, in your state, that may not be illegal right now, but in some states it may, and they may be pissed off. You come in and, video and take photos of their personal belongings. So I just wanted to add that in. If you're a tenant and they're selling your property, you may want to not leave things out and make sure that you're in communication with your landlord. But the nice thing about if you have an agreement with your landlord in writing, a lease, they survive even death of the landlord. So you can't just be thrown out. They survive foreclosures. A lot of people will give cash for keys to get you out, but a lease is, and I'm not an attorney, check with your attorney, but I'm pretty sure that that's in all states. Leases, you have a right to ownership. You actually have ownership rights with a lease. That property is, you have the joys of ownership. You can't do alterations and knock walls down and stuff like that. But you do have entitlements as being the tenant. And you could probably say no to having your contents photographed. Guys, when things go out on the internet, you can't really grab them back. They're gone. Now we're getting a lot of requests with all these Matterport tours, these 3D tours, where the buyers are like, hey, man, everybody can see all of our bedrooms. They can see, all the doors, the safe, where it's located because the seller left that. Can we get those photos down? Can we get those videos down? You can petition the MLS to take them down, but you can't. How do you get them from everywhere? You can't. People screenshot, they embed, they do different things. It would almost be impossible. So, a lot of this, is is becoming, as privacy is a big concern, since you have none, these things are becoming issues. So I just wanted to add that because that was something that we have been working with our attorneys on. All right, I think we got Dan in the dirt on deck. Let's bring him in. What
Hey,
is
Todd,
up?
how are you?
Dan, what's going on, brother? How are you?
Oh, not good, buddy.
No?
Nope. Our first house we tried to buy, spent all this money to have an inspector check it. Then we had to bring it because the floors had this real bad wave and the center wall had a sag in it. Had to bring in a structural inspector. Come to find out, they built the piers wrong, nailed them on the side of the beams when they built the house instead of under them. So it caused the floors and the exterior walls to sag. $40,000 fix on a $130,000 house we walked. And the seller didn't even want to move on the price in the first place. So
Did you buy it?
Nope. Then we went to another place. We submitted an offer. Luckily, it just got to the submitting offer part. The realtor we used was awful. She kept lying to us. She was lying about the 203K program. I know that program inside and out because I've been researching that for a year. So she kept lying to us. She kept trying to like steer us like in this certain direction, which I didn't like. We put an offer in on a house. It was they wanted 140. We offered them 125 plus 5,000 closing costs, which would make it 130. Well, they countered. We're waiting on that offer to come in, but we're going to cancel. We're not going to take it. The counter offer. The house has no outside storage. I have my whole house right now is full of tools. Like I have more tools than like house items, and so no outside storage. Needs gutters. The pad for the AC HVAC system washing out, and the rainwater from the roof's dumping right on top of the HVAC. And that's a no-no. And to do that ourselves, if we bought the gutter stuff, would probably be a couple of $1,000s, and then us doing it. And it was rotten because it's one of those wood cabiny looking houses, not log cabin siding, but cedar siding.
Mm-hmm.
And it was rotting the bottom out from where the rainwater was splashing up. So it would almost need one of those knee walls to put up that, even if it's like faux brick, so water wouldn't touch it. Had outdated appliances, and we just was like this, and without that, no outside storage, and it was on 2 acres, and it's here in Arkansas. Had a fireplace. I mean, it was pretty nice for a 2-bedroom, but we just felt with not even a shed. The shed that was there was rotting down. It would have to be hauled out of there. So and they didn't. And this realtor we were using didn't even want to say that we wanted that rotted shed removed. She said to wait and to see if the FHA appraiser would say something before we'd have to say anything. So we put in that offers. It was 125 plus the 5,000 closing costs would make it 130, and then she put in some $500 for the home appliance warranty because the appliances were older. They wanted to counter, and we already knew we were going to walk. To have a garage built, Todd, for us, even if it's one of those metal shells on even if it was on the dirt or a gravel, because obviously a slab's up to 12 or 15 grand for a 25 or 30 foot shop. Not having no shelter or nothing like that, and for outside storage, we were just like, nope, we're going to walk. So we've had 2 failures so far.
Yeah.
And the folks out there, I'll tell you about the 203K program. You got to have a 620 score or higher to qualify for that. It's higher than the 580 that the standard FHA loan is. The interest rate is also 1% higher than what the current FHA rates are. So say if the rate is 7%, they're going to charge you 8% to do an FHA 203K loan. And as far as the HUD homes go, if you pay their full asking price, which a lot of them are overpriced in my opinion.
Yeah, they're not selling at full ask.
Yeah, if they do, they'll pay your closing costs. Now, generally, as a personal bidder, from like what I researched, they have an 85 or 88 rule, 88% rule. Like if you bid in that range, they'll a lot of times they'll auto accept it, like your bid. So that's just advice out there.
They have a percentage, right? Yep, of acceptance.
Yep.
Other than that, they just let it sit on the market. Yep.
Yep. And this realtor lady, Paul, she was just she was just awful. Just awful to deal with. I just did not. It's like she had no idea about the FHA 203K program. She was just lying about stuff, like outright lying. She got Todd. And I'm not trying to be rude or disrespectful, but I thought this lady was going to have an orgasm when she was talking about when they were selling them houses overpriced during COVID. And she even caught herself, like she knew when she was acting like that, saying that, like she caught herself. Like she was almost like she was getting a high on how excited she got when people were overpaying for houses. I mean, it was vile. And after this experience, we're waiting for us to do the formal part where we're going to decline the counteroffer.
She might be listening to you right now, Dan.
let her listen. I mean, I will never work with this lady again.
She's getting fired, huh?
After that, I will never hire. I will never deal with this lady again. We had to freaking do all the legwork. She didn't find us one house. Every house we were asking about was ones we found.
Well, that's what so many people are upset about, and because you know the buyers over the last several years have been going to the open houses. They've been look. I've been at open houses of my listings, and then I make sure everybody's registered. I want to know who's walking through the door. And believe me, I don't solicit any of them. So for the agents out there that are I'm collecting data from my seller. My seller wants to know who walks through the door. If you want to come look at the house, my seller wants to know. I say to my seller, do you want me to collect the data? Yep. Everybody coming through the house, everybody. I want to know who they are, what their name is, their phone number. Of course, I'm advising them to get that. So they come through and I'm asking them, I get the information. So I have the sheets in front of me. And whether they have an agent or not, whether they occupy or came to the open house with the agent. And then all of a sudden, you get an offer. Somebody calls you up and like, yeah, we're putting an offer in on this property, and we want to, what's it going to take to get the deal done? I'm like, wait a minute. I'm looking at my sheets here. I'm going, oh, your client was Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Have you seen the property? They came in this afternoon. Have you seen the property? No, I haven't seen the property. Are you going to come and look at the property before you put an offer in? No, I don't need to look at the property. So all you're doing is calling me, asking me what's it going to take to get the deal done. You're not actually going to come and look at the house that your client is spending $450,000, $750,000, $1 million for. You're not going to come and look at the property. You're not even going to come and check it out. No, I don't need to. This is why people are really upset at real estate agents.
Right. Here's another side of that too, Todd. I'm not $1 million house buyer. My wife and I'm disabled from a stroke. And my wife's the one that works full time, and she's a medical biller. And then she's going to school to be a certified medical biller and coder, so she can be able to work from home in that line of work. For that line of work, that is computer work. And but that's neither here nor there.
Hey Dan, I can look. You know what? I know what you're saying. It should not matter what the price is. The fact that I said the numbers that I said, you're exactly right. You know what? And I tell people this all the time. Your $200,000, your $150,000 house is your $1 million house.
Yes.
That is it's everything to you. And I get it. I believe me, I apologize if I was seeming like I was undermining the value. It really wasn't the value that I was talking about so much as and maybe I did make it seem like that, but no, it doesn't matter what the price is. You should be looking at the house for your client.
You taught us so much, Todd. We've been watching your channel. We've been on your channel a long time watching.
I know you have.
And I'm constantly. My wife works full time. So I have to do something to do my part. And I'm doing all this research. I've been researching for well over a year. We got our credit up. I think we're like 8 points from having, on my scores, we're now a 700, thanks to my wife. We did a lot of research on how to do all that. Her one middle score is literally 8 points from being the 620 that you need for a 203K.
Awesome.
That's it. We worked so hard to get here. I sold my one military truck after a stroke. I couldn't drive no more. We paid everything up where it needs to be at. We don't touch our credit cards. We only have a car payment for her car, and that only happened because her head gasket went out, and it was just not worth fixing it. It had to go to the scrap pile. And
that's awesome,
so we've been,
man.
yeah, we've done so much to get here, Paul. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with remember your name again with stroke. And just
Todd.
Todd. Yeah, Todd. I'm sorry. So yeah, we worked so hard to get here, and I'm just not going to be preyed on like that. And I just felt like this lady was preying on us, and I don't want to go through that.
Well, why don't you, on your next house that you're looking at, man, send me the details on it, and keep me more in the loop. You can send me an email. I see you, Dan, all the time in the comments. I really appreciate you being with us, and I'm glad that you're learning, that you're getting something, and that's important. And I commend you really on knowing when to say no, and I think that is frustrating because you're paying money for inspections, you're spending time, which is just as valuable as money.
Right.
It's aggravating, it's frustrating, but I think the benefit is looking at the good stuff, the good side. Is what you're not going to permit and what you're not going to allow. You're going to stick to your guns with that, and you're going to find something amazing, and it's going to be everything that you want. So I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, it was, like I said, I'll say this last thing. That last house that had the structural issue, we spent almost $1,000 just for the inspections and ended up not getting it.
Yep. All right, man. We'll keep in touch, Dan. Thank you so much for jumping on. God bless you, man.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay. Yeah. See, these are the real lives. I mean, this is why, when I don't feel like spending a Tuesday night, because I've been at work since 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't, and sometimes I'm like, this, and then we hear Dan and his story, and the fact that he watches our show and then he's learning, it makes it so much. It makes it worthwhile. We love you guys. We really appreciate our audience, and you guys are fantastic. One of the best audiences I think anybody could have. Being on the internet, I mean, God, look, I never thought that I would be doing YouTube at my age or in my career, and spending so much time interacting with people from all over the world, really, but especially in the United States. Joe, do we have anything that we're missing before we jump off? Man, 2 hours flew by, right? We get all the super chats in. All right, guys, well, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, maybe you would consider doing so now. And the biggest compliment that you could do for me here and Joe, that is with me every Tuesday night and every podcast, working hard behind the scenes, is to share our channel and our videos with your family and friends, that we could build the most amazing online network where we can talk about things that are really happening and kind of go through things together. So look forward to your hitting that subscribe. If you like the video, you can hit the thumbs up and it'll let me know that you did. And guys, we will see you next time.